We're live on a Thursday. It is Cards Hub 365, powered by Gray Bar here on Sports Hub STL. Joe Roderick, Brendan Schaefer with you, and the game just ended, Brendan. It was a 1-1 tie. Fascinating game of baseball.
Yeah.
And another start time for us before 2:30. You gotta love it.
I do on a day like today where we are just doing all kinds of stuff on Sports Hub. Let's just do it, baby. Let's knock it out. Let's go.
And hey, I mean, you sit here and you look at everything going on today. I mean, we got a Blues watch party tonight. We got a Blues post-game show. We got a Mizzou post-game show. Rock is sitting over in the studio screaming his lungs out right now, watching the Billikens game. I don't know how many times I have heard. I mean, that man is pumped up and ready to go. But no bigger story today than the Cardinals signing a free agent, Brendan.
Phil Maton, welcome to the club 1 year later. Like everybody thought he was going to come here last year.
The first thing I saw those tweets coming out today at about 6:30, 7 a.m. local time. And I thought, is somebody screwing? Like, is somebody just retweeting Katie Woo from a year ago? Like, that was the first. Because I went back and looked, and sure enough, I mean, a year ago, it was Phil Maton. Hey, he's close. Like, I feel like, was he in Jupiter at some point last year? I feel like he...
Like, physically, was he there? I have no idea. I remember, like, winter meetings, it was a thing that people were talking about, and then it kind of resurfaced in the spring. But, no, I don't remember necessarily it getting that far. But the Cardinals talked with him. I mean, Mo referenced it this morning, that they talked with him, and they tried to get him last year, and it just didn't quite work out. And then this year, it did work out. And so here he is, and Mo said I was kind of surprised he was still on the market. So it ends up working. Landon commenting, this is a baseball show, but I will admit I was locked in on Arkansas Ole Miss in the SEC tournament as we were going live, and Ole Miss bangs a 3 to knock out Arkansas, but Arkansas covers the spread, Landon. That's the big news for your boy. So anyway, there's a lot to get to here. So anyway, something about
we can talk. Hey, we got all kinds. Yeah, we got all kinds of content. We could throw gambling
When's
stuff
my
out.
College basketball gambling show? When's that start? I mean, goodness gracious.
Whatever the hell you wanted to. I know domesticated gamblers are doing a special next week before the tournament. You can jump on that and give all your picks on that. Right now, I'm just sitting and waiting for the Blues to win the cup, and I threw $5 on that the other day.
Okay. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, got plus 20,000 on that.
I bet you did.
DraftKings.
Oh,
I haven't looked yet to see if Phil Maton joining the Cardinals has what that's done to the odds.
Yeah, we talked a lot about win total yesterday, 77.5. Now it's probably like 83.5, right?
That's got wins.
Six
wins, huh?
No, but he is a nice piece. Like, we don't have to overreact, but it's a nice piece because I don't know that we've seen Riley O'Brien in a while. I texted John Denton. I'm like, can you find out about Riley O'Brien? Just because the world is kind of wondering. Maybe they're not. It's just me that's wondering. But like, do questions about other guys' health maybe play into the Maton thing? Maybe not. Maybe it's more of a, hey, Nick Anderson was supposed to be that veteran, and we're not really sure where he's at right now. Maybe it's, a combination of the two. But with Graceffo getting optioned today too, Joe, I think that's kind of the sign that they feel pretty good about where they are with the bullpen churn that they're going to have after the Maton signing. And he's just a veteran to have out there as you do. There's going to be opportunity to usher in these younger arms. We saw a number of them last year. They're all guys with options, though, for the most part. And so you're going to see them churn through. Maton can be a nice little stable presence out there. Look, July comes and the Cardinals maybe make a tough decision to trade Helsley. It's nice to also have another veteran out there. Even though if you're doing that move, Cardinals are probably going nowhere fast in 2025. It's still nice to have those kind of guys usher along your young players, because maybe 2 years down the road, you'll be glad he was there to be a mentor to Roycroft, to be a mentor to Ryan Ludus, that sort of thing.
I'm so torn on how I view bullpens during the major league season, because there is part of me that you look and you're like, you have an all-star, you have the you have the reliever of the year and Ryan Helsley in the back end there to come in and shut him down. And it seems like last year they figured out the formula that's going to make Ryan Helsley work, which is something that they struggled for a while to get to. The other side of me says, whatever 8 guys they have out there in that bullpen on March 27th, about 5 of them, maybe 6 are going to be completely different come June. And, whether it's due to ineffectiveness or just, injury, whatever it might be, I don't take too much stock into what that bullpen looks like. Like, I am much more intrigued by who the 4 bench players are than who your relievers are, because those 4 bench players, I think, play a big role, where the relievers, it's, oh, okay, that guy didn't work. You send him down to Memphis, you bring the new guy up, and suddenly, boom, it all works again.
Yeah, and I like to use the word that bullpens are fickle. Relievers are fickle, and you have to kind of bake that uncertainty into the way you approach it. And what does that mean? Shotgun approach. You just have a bunch of guys. And I think that can end up working out because they've got a bunch of guys that are on the 40-man, guys that we haven't even seen yet. Like, there's an individual whose name is Matz, and you're going to see him pitch for the Cardinals this year at some point or another. Why? Because he's a reliever who's on the 40-man roster, and that is the way that the churn is going to work. It might be 2 spots that are churned. Depends on the Nick Anderson thing. Maybe it's only 1 at first, but then 1 gets hurt, and then everybody else is eligible to be optioned, so you churn through 2 spots. Maybe it's 3. Like, you're going to see some movement because of the things you mentioned, Joe. Guys are going to perform well. They're going to perform badly. They're going to get hurt. They're going to get back to health. It's going to just be a revolving door. Here's who's not revolving. At least let's talk pre-trade deadline, because anything can happen.
By the way, we do have breaking news. The Cardinals did make a trade.
Did they?
Yeah, Bailey Horn traded to the Tigers for cash consideration.
And he was the man that was DFA'd for the signing from this morning with Phil Maton. So Bailey Horn goes to the Tigers. Basically, that's great news because, it doesn't really matter that much, but he was going to go through waivers, and this was the opportunity. That's what DFA means, by the way. It doesn't just mean punt him off the face of the earth. DFA is designate for assignment, and then you get a couple of days to assign him. And that can either mean to Memphis if he clears waivers, or it can mean, hey, he's on the waiver block and he's traded to the Tigers because they said, yeah, we'll take him. So that works out all as well. Easy come, easy go for Bailey Horn. He was just added to the organization. Seems like not even very many weeks ago. But yeah, that's the way that it works. So anyway, when it comes to the Cardinal bullpen, pre-trade deadline is the way I want to focus on here, because depending on how good or bad the team is, will change what the outlook looks like August 1st. But before that, it's going to be Helsley's in there, not going to be optioned. JoJo is in there, not going to be optioned. And beyond that, you can start to get a little bit creative. Obviously, Phil Maton's going to be in there. But even Liberatore, I think the sign that we saw today that Libby's going to be in the bullpen, other than Mozeliak kind of half saying it this morning when he talked to reporters, was the fact that Graceffo was sent to AAA. He's no longer in big league camp, was sent to minor league camp. The reason you do that is because you keep him stretched out to start. But what does that tell me about Libby? Well, he was kind of in that conversation too. He's probably somebody they end up putting into the bullpen. But the thing about it is, for Graceffo, they can have him stretch out, and he sort of jumps Libby in line unless the Cardinals want to try to go back and forth with him all year again, which I hope they don't do like they did last year. But Graceffo's going to get his chance, but he can always be a reliever later once they go, okay, we're through April, we're through May, we've got the depth that we need. Quinn Matthews has stepped up. McGreevy has stepped up. Maybe Graceffo can go back into that bullpen conversation so he can be one of those guys later on in the year that begins to be churned. But otherwise, John King, I know he was in ARB. He can be churned. He's still got an option. Brian Fernandez, you think, well, he's a really good pitcher for him. He can be optioned as well. Most of these spots are still malleable to some degree or another in the bullpen, which is why I think those young pitchers that we're talking about in the relief conversation, Joe, they will get their chances as the season goes along. Remind people that the roster on the 27th of March is not going to be the roster on June 1st, on July 1st, on September 1st.
But so take me through, because you said that Graceffo you think is going to skip Libby in line. You're talking about if something happens with the rotation, which we've talked about what that rotation looks like, right, and extended beyond. So when you're talking about that line, are we going McGreevy 6, Graceffo 7, and then Liberatore 8th? So I think Liberatore's getting out of line is my point. He won't be in the line. There's a fork in the road for him and Graceffo at this point in the spring. The route they chose for Graceffo keeps him in play to start later on if they need him, but you can always dial back. It's harder to go from relief to then on the fly start. Now, they've done it with Liberatore before, so who's to say they won't do it again? But I think the difference now is you have McGreevy ready. You have a Graceffo who's ostensibly as ready as he's going to be. There's just maybe not a spot for him right now. You've got guys that you feel like you can turn to,
And then hopefully by May or June, you add Quinn Matthews' name to that list after you see a little bit more development from him, to where you don't need to, with Liberatore, go, well, we don't really have anybody in Memphis that's healthy and we think can do it. So we're going to shove Libby into a spot start. I think he can just be a reliever for them as long as you get through the early portion of the season healthy and he assimilates into that role. If there's a bunch of injuries in the next 3 weeks, it could be back on the table because Libby wants to start and he's still kind of built up-ish to where you didn't send him too far down the strictly relief path to where you can't get it back. I think Graceffo jumps Libby in line because Libby gets out of line. I think he ends up being a reliever, barring a bunch of injuries happening over the next few weeks. Because, Joe, once you get to June and July, unless you're going to send Libby down to like actually stretch out, I don't think it's super fair to him to have him continue to oscillate back and forth as a swing man when all these other guys that would get the opportunity, they're built up, they're 90, 100 pitches before they get put into that situation. That's all I mean by Graceffo jumping the line. But right now, I think it's McGreevy 6, probably Graceffo 7. Comments, let us know if I'm missing anybody. And then Quinn Matthews is 8th, but he's somebody who could jump the line if he performs really well. He probably doesn't jump McGreevy, but pending performance could jump Graceffo. I could see that.
Yeah, and we'll see who they go with tomorrow. It's the spring breakout game, so we'll have more on that tomorrow. See who they're pitching in that. I imagine it's going to be a case to get to see Quinn Matthews pitch again for the Cardinals. That game will be televised, so you can get your Quinn Matthews viewing in, and then tweet at us and tweet at the Cardinals about how he should be in the rotation on opening day, possibly starting over Sonny, but maybe behind him on day 2.
Yeah. No, I get it. I understand the excitement for such players. It doesn't have to, just like for it to count as a runway, for it to count as a transition season, you start from one and then you move to the next. I think you can do that throughout the summer, and Quinn is a big part of that. I think he's going to debut this year. It's just not going to be the first 5 games of the season.
The one I go back, speaking of the bullpen and kind of looking at how it shapes out, and I know, I think Ollie today in his comments to the media talked about how many 850 some pitchers in baseball last year, and just how many you need to get through a season over and over again. And we sit here and we talk about, okay, is it, do you have 20 guys that are major league ready pitchers, or at least major league-ish ready pitchers compared to other teams? I just look, when you're sitting here and you're trying to put together this bullpen for March 27th and what it's going to look like. The one thing that I love to go back and look at is TJ McFarland's 2021 season. When you talk about just an anomaly that bullpens are. Mm-hmm. And just how it goes from one to another with that. In 2020, with the Oakland Athletics, a 4.35 ERA. The year before that, in Arizona, a 4.82 ERA. He comes to St. Louis in 21, a 2.56 ERA. Next year, blows up for a 6.61 ERA. I mean, it's just one of those where you find the hot hand for that. I mean, look at, Genesis Cabrera, when he was, how good he was for the Cardinals for so long. He started to get bad. They DFA'd him. He went to the Blue Jays, became good again.
Change of scenery is massive. And I remember that Genesis deal, his situation was he wasn't satisfied that the Cardinals weren't putting him into high-profile spots. He wanted to be more of a closer, setup man. And they were like, yeah, we don't really view you that way. And so they cast him free. They let him go. And I said that moment, I'm like, I don't even think the Cardinals were wrong to do it, because he was kind of a malcontent in that bullpen, and you don't want that around. But I think he's going to end up in a postseason bullpen this year. And sure as shooting, I think that ended up happening. He pitched in a playoff game for the Blue Jays. That's just the way it be sometimes with relief pitching, Joe. And it's a great example.
Yeah, it's crazy how it works. And it, for as many times as it's benefited the Cardinals, it's bit them in the ass just as many times. And it's one of those where you can't sit there and blame the organization, because, as you mentioned, it's change of scenery in this situation. That it's, if you are it is for, especially for pitchers, for bullpens, you just go in there and think of how much knowledge is being shared in those bullpens too, where you get into a new bullpen and you're around 12 other pitchers, and one guy just says, hey, have you thought about gripping a baseball this way instead of this way? Next 100%. Thing you know, your ERA drops 3 points.
Just from that one conversation. That's why I say it is so fickle. It is so hard to produce or predict from year to year, because those things legitimately happen. And so why not have a Phil Maton who spins the hell out of the ball influence some of the otother pitchers and be like, yeah, this is the thing I do for my curveball. And then he'll tell that to 5 guys, and 4 of them will go, how do you do that? There's no way I could do that. And the 5th guy will go, wait a minute, I could do that. And then he does. That's literally how the bullpen works out there sometimes. And so I think that it's such a good comparison. And here's one thing I want to say about Maton, and we'll get to some of these other comments. On the Maton signing, you know what the Phil Maton signing isn't? It's not Greg Holland. It's not $14 million crammed into a blender. It's okay.
God, I forgot about Greg. Oh my God.
Here's the comparison. And the reason I think it could be brought up is it was late in spring when they finally said, all right, we need a closer. I don't know if it was Matheny beating the table for wanting a closer. They end up bringing Greg Holland in, and he is just terrible, right? I think I did. I felt bad about it, but at one point I sent a tweet and I said, you ever see $14 million crammed into a blender? And that was the whole tweet, and obviously everybody knew what I was referencing. But this isn't that, because this is a 7th of the cost. Katie Wu reporting it's a $2 million one-year deal. Fine. There is no risk associated with this. It's basically double what they were going to pay Nick Anderson if they put him on the team. And that's part of your bullpen conversation, Joe. I don't know what they'll do yet with Nick Anderson, but I think this is at least some insurance against him maybe not panning out. We'll see. Maybe they could include both guys and just hope that, injuries will happen, and they'll happen, and you move on. But
this is one of those, it's like those graphs of 4 different outcomes of things. If the Cardinals are bad and Maton's bad, you release him.
Yeah.
If Maton's bad and the Cardinals are good, you release him.
Right.
If the Cardinals are good and Maton's good, great. You pitch him and he gets you into the postseason. If the Cardinals are bad and Maton's good, you trade him and you get something back for more than $2 million in place of it.
You know what? I don't know that Phil Maton's going to be a Aroldis Chapman, but the one that I continue to talk about, a couple of years ago, whatever season it was, where the Royals signed Aroldis Chapman in the offseason, and I said, oh my gosh, they just bought themselves a nice prospect in July. Good for them. That prospect turned into Cole Reagans. It happened that exact way. He had a pretty solid season for them. A contender said, yep, let's have him in that bullpen mix for the back end. The Rangers traded Cole Reagans, who was a solid pitching prospect but hadn't quite put it together. Cole Reagans could win the Cy Young this year in the American League. These types of trades for teams like the Cardinals, who it feels like they're in the middle right now, and they're kind of not maybe contending again just yet, but they're transitioning toward it, whatever. Why not take a shot on a guy like that? What if he accidentally has a 2 ERA and the Cardinals are 5 games under in July? Yeah, you trade him, and maybe that prospect you get turns into something, and all you've done is buy a prospect. There is nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I think the Pirates tried to do that last year with him, but then they couldn't trade him.
And they tried, and it doesn't always work out. But sometimes, I think that's the best example in history of the Royals that season knew they weren't ready to contend, but that's a couple $1 million for Chapman, and then if he pitches well, you've got a nice gold mine on your hand come July. And a team like the Rangers that was frustrated with their pitching prospect that just didn't quite pan out, bang, change of scenery. The dude is an absolute stud for Kansas City now. I'm not saying they all work out that way, but when $2 million is the barrier to entry, that's the cost to buy into this potential. You're right. That 4-way graph can go, if it goes any of the 2 ways at the end where the Cardinals are good or the Cardinals are bad, as long as Maton's halfway decent, it's nothing ventured, potentially something to be gained.
Yeah. Hey, this is a Cards Hub 365 powered by Gray Bar. If you're suffering from supply chain issues and they're disrupting your operations, have no fear. Gray Bar has you covered, and you can rely on their nationwide logistics network to get what you need, where they need, when they need to get there, and all within budget. Gray Bar is a trusted and leading North American distributor for electrical communications, data networking, and industrial products. Gray Bar literally supports products of any industry, construction, hospitals, industrial plants, schooling. It doesn't matter. There's just one clear mission: to serve as that vital link in the supply chain, adding value for customers and suppliers with innovative solutions and services. Here's what you need to do. Visit graybar.com to start an order today. That's graybar.com, and fix those supply chain issues with Graybar, your distributor for electrical and datacom needs. Joe Roderick, Brendan Schaefer here with you. Brendan, Cardinals again tied today 1-1. I will ask you this. I brought it up. I don't know if you've looked at this yet. How many runs in 20 games have the Cardinals scored in spring training?
No, I haven't looked. There have been enough of the games where they've scored very few. 20 games. I'll say 30 runs. Now, there's one where they had like 12. Give me 40 runs. Give me 40 runs.
You think they've scored 40 runs in 20 games?
Has it been better than that? Has it been better?
They have 78 runs in spring training.
Shows you what I know. Listen, man, after I left Jupiter, I'm like, I don't know. They're playing a game. I don't know. I'll be locked in when it's time.
They are tied with two other teams for the second lowest amount of runs scored.
30 was a bad guess. I'm owning that as we go along here.
The White Sox, we're starting off with a real bad team you want to be compared to. The White Sox, Brendan, have 78 runs in 18 games.
Yeah.
The Braves have 78 runs in 19 games. The Padres have 72 runs in 20 games.
Okay, so compared to the Padres, because they expect to be good this year, they expect to have an offense that's robust. They've got several really good hitters: Tatis, Jackson Merrill, Bogarts, like the list goes on. So is that a sign that it's going to be okay, or is it a sign that like, we're screwed, like these guys are screwed? I don't know. We're getting to the point where we have to probably make some determinations about the way we feel about that, but I don't know. I like seeing the Padres down there, honestly, because it makes me feel better about where the Cardinals are at. Because I don't think the Padres are going to be 30th in runs scored in MLB this year. The White Sox might be, but the Cardinals were right down there with them a lot of the year in offensive stats last year, Joe. The White Sox, it was like Cardinals are 28th in risk. They're doing this. It's like that could be the case again this year, but you're hoping that everybody's a little bit better. I played the game with Brooke this morning on the. See, I don't even know what to call the show when Randy Carricker's not in.
Randy Carricker show featuring Brooke Grimsley with Brendan Schaefer filling in. Yes.
And Rocchio's over in the corner. That was kind of the show this morning. And I did the game where I gave her every OPS of the Cardinal regulars, like all 10 or 11 of them, and asked her over under. Are they going to do better this year than they did last year? The only one where I kind of caveated and before I even let her answer, I said, Wilson Contreras had an 848 OPS. If he's not over, that's okay, because he's going to hopefully play 50 additional games compared to what he played last year. And that's the way you get more production, even if his numbers are the same. But like, you've seen these guys' numbers. You're familiar with what they did last year. How many of them would you say confidently, he's going to be worse this year? He's going to go under on the OPS compared to what he did a year ago? Because I don't think that's a very big number for me anyway. And it was true of Brooke as well. I don't know how you feel about that. But it's kind of a weird juxtaposition because we are looking at the daily numbers and they're not scoring very many runs. But I also look at the pieces and I go, I don't think there's anybody that I'm betting against, like in a very harsh way. That's where I'm at. I don't know if you have a take on that.
I mean, this is the first time for this show today that I actually looked at deep into some of these spring training numbers. And it is concerning just how much worse they are than some of the other teams in baseball. Their overall team batting average right now in spring is 198.
Sure. Do these stats matter though? Like I've said no to this point, and now they start mattering from today.
Number two is the Mets hitting 222. That is 24 points higher than what the Cardinals are at right now. I mean, it's not like the runs scored. Like you look at some of those teams, you go, okay, that's 24 points as a team.
Yeah.
Lower right now. OPS for the Cardinals. And again, Mets right down there as well. Mets OPS 652, Cardinals 657. Yeah. For comparison right now, the Cubs OPS in spring is 868.
The Cardinals offense stinks in spring right now. Like that, what they've done is bad. I'm asking you if it matters. Have we gotten deep enough that you like, yes, I'm scared.
Yeah, I think as the days go on, and these struggles like this continue,
okay.
To me, it's more and more like a week ago, we were probably sitting here doing the show and I was it's May 8th. We got time, plenty of time. Now I'm like, God, it's May 13th, like 2 weeks from today. It's a St. Louis holiday. I mean, it's
okay. So you're buying in to some extent that you're worried about these stats. Let me play the game with you. Do you think Mason Wynn will have a lower OPS than he did last year? It was 730. Now
I will say Mason Wynn has a better year this year. Yes.
Okay. To that point, he is one of the names that you're looking at his batting line contributing to that bad start for the Cardinals in spring. He's one of the chief contributors to why his numbers stink. But I would agree with you that I think he has a better year than a 730 OPS that he had last year. Brendan Donovan is another guy that's struggling right now in spring. His OPS was in the 750s last year. Do you think he will be worse? And maybe the answer is yes. Maybe you're saying, yeah, I'm buying in that his spring, it matters that he's not playing well, and so I think he's going to be worse. Would you say that, though? Because last year his 750 some odd OPS was lower than his career norm.
I mean, 2 weeks ago, I sat here and I said that Brendan Donovan was going to have a Ben Zobrist.
Yeah, he did. And I was like, I don't know about that. I love Brendan Donovan.
But yeah, as it goes on, I'm not sure if that's something I could say or not.
759. Does he beat it or is he below it? OPS.
That's one I'm unsure about. That's one that I think would contribute to the success of the season.
Okay, how about Newt Bar? Same OPS, 759 last year. And he's been okay in spring.
You know I'm not a big Newt guy, so I'm going to say lower on that one.
Okay. How about this? Ivan Herrera, 800. He had an 800 OPS last year, but he is raking right now in spring. One of the only plays I saw from today's game, because they've been busy, was a triple to left field that poor Jose Altuve. He jumped at the wall to try to catch it, Joe, and the lad is just 5'5", and he extended.
It was cute. I have seen 11U players try to make a play like that from that height so many times. You just call the
future probable Hall of Famer cute, trying to catch a fly ball.
He got up there against the wall and he thought he could reach above it and he couldn't. I mean, it's the same. I mean, Brent, you'll learn this through fatherhood over the years. I mean, all you gotta do is just put stuff on top of the fridge and your kid can't get it.
Oh, yeah.
That's the left field wall for Jose Altuve. I mean, it's just right there and he can't reach any higher.
Can't reach on top of the fridge. Here you go. And I know that most of the games they're half the games they'll play in the Houston ballpark where you can't. No left fielders ever robbed a home run there. Right. Does he rob a home run this year? Can Altuve climb one of those? Because there's some short porches in left, like where the wall is like 3 feet tall in some of those ballparks. Could he rob one this year in left?
Can I see him do the Ozuna thing where he climbs in the stand?
I would love to see him do the Ozuna to rob a homer. That would be brilliant. He probably doesn't get one, but God bless him for trying. That was great. Hey, Nolan Arenado, 719 OPS, higher or lower?
If he wants out of St. Louis, it better be higher.
No, but what do you think's going to happen?
I do think I think he should improve. Yes,
I agree. Nolan Gorman, 671.
Oof.
Not a high bar. I'm not going to steer your answer, but this is the reason I'm asking is like, if we're really concerned, let's put our money where our mouth is, and who's going to be the ones that suck like they're sucking this spring? Because I think the guys like Mason, he's going to rebound. Brendan Donovan, he's going to be fine, in my opinion. That's where I'm kind of like, should I be concerned? Well, let's look at the players. Who do I say is actually not going to bounce back from the struggles? Maybe Michael Ciani, okay? But he's probably not the starter if that's the case, too.
Right. And yeah, I mean, I told you yesterday, I took him at 87 plus yesterday. So that's putting money where my mouth is, right?
Yeah. How about Jordan Walker, 619 OPS? You think he'll beat that if he's healthy, right?
If he's healthy, yeah.
If he's not healthy, he's not going to play. That's the reason I add that, because right now he's kind of banged up. We'll see with the knee. So that's what I'm looking at. There's all these guys where you're like, I'm scared. They have a 190 average in spring, and it's bad. But I'm looking at the players going, okay, if you think that's going to be indicative of where they are in the season, tell me who. Who are the guys that actually end up stinking up the joint the way that they have so far this spring? And there's not a name on the list that I'm like looking at his spring and going, this is bad. Other than maybe Ciani, but I think that it would not be difficult to imagine either Victor in center or Nootbaar sliding over so they can fit Burleson in at the DH. And then suddenly that's not the fact that Michael Ciani is hitting 034 doesn't necessarily mean the Cardinals offense is going to stink.
Right.
But, it can go either way. This is a great question from you, mama. Not you, mama, not my mama, but their mama. Do you think they ride Baker at the start of the season due to him being hot right now?
Ride him how? Like you're saying, are you talking like start him at DH? I think his role is he's the right-handed bat off the bench. That is what he is going to do. He'll make the team, and he will be that right-handed bat off the bench if you're facing a lefty late in the game. Mm-hmm. If that's how you're riding him, that's how you're riding him. Yeah.
And yeah, you'll see him every opportunity there is. And the good news about what the bench could be with whether it's a Barrero or if it's Ciani off the bench, he can come in and they can move guys around to be able to have Baker be a one and done. Because like Donovan can go just about anywhere. So you can do that. And then it's defensive replacement mode late in games. So there's going to be ways to maneuver it, I think. Yeah. The problem is sort of going to be, though, sometimes what if you've used up a guy on your bench and the defensive replacement isn't a perfect match to where you have to try to keep Baker in the game, which you don't want to do because you don't want to take Contreras out. Like, there are going to be some interesting deals. I agree with you, though. Would love to see Baker on the team. Here's the other thing, though. Like, if Pages is starting at some point and Herrera is available off the bench, he will be used in that role against a late lefty, I think, before you would go to Luke and Baker. But it's a question of how many games does Herrera play. I am fascinated. I don't know where I would set the over-under on his starts at catcher. Maybe you can give me a number and I can try to knock it back to you. Over-under Herrera starts, but I want you to set the line and I answer the question. See, takes me off the hook entirely.
I'll work on that then. Yeah, I'll think about it and I'll work on what I think that looks like. Because remember, I mean, the pitchers love Pages, so I think that's one. I don't know if that's one. Like, I couldn't give you an over-under on that at the start of the season, because once you get into the season, if there is a pitcher that loves Pages, and you have a lot of veteran pitchers on that rotation, and they say, I want him catching me every day out.
They might say, but here's the deal with that, though. They might say, thank you. Well, duly noted, Miles Michaelis. Also, you're off the team. Like, there's
you think they're gonna cut? They're gonna release Miles Michaelis over his request, over a Von Herrera request.
That was like a funny hyperbolic way to frame it. Let me tell you what I actually think about that. It's April 23rd, and Miles is like, I did feel more comfortable with Pages. And they go, Miles, that's lovely, but your ERA is 5.02, and you're kind of on that borderline because Quinn Matthews is heating up. Like, you know what I'm saying? There should be.
That's when they say, hey, you know what? Yeah, Pages will catch you your next start. Great, that's fine. And we'll see. Well, if you go out there and you throw a one-hit shutout, great, he'll catch you every time.
Don't necessarily get too comfortable. And I'm not in, like, that feels so dumb to say because he's one of the veteran most players on the team. But guess what? If it's a transition year and he does struggle, which yesterday we should talk about it. 5 innings, 1 run, he was good. If he's good, there's nothing to talk about. Michaelis is here the whole way through, and maybe he gets traded if he approves it with a no trade, only if the Cardinals are bad because somebody else wants him. He's been a 2-time All-Star. That could absolutely happen for Miles this year. But if it's going the other way, this is all hypothetical. So I'm not predicting that he's going to have a 5.4 ERA. But if he does, it's going to be like, brother, if you want a different catcher, it doesn't really matter. If Steven Matz wants a different catcher and he's in a similar boat with ERA, it doesn't really matter. Like Sonny Gray, sure. But I think Sonny Gray is the type of guy that he's going to work diligently with whoever's catching him. And I'm not saying Matz or Michaelis are going to be like problems with that either. I think they'll throw to anybody. But it's just kind of the notion of who's running the show this year when it comes to that. Because the Cardinals played that game a couple of years ago with Wilson Contreras, and the pitchers had one preference. It turns out the pitchers weren't very good the way they were performing anyway. So maybe we shouldn't have thrown our new franchise catcher under the bus in the way that we handled that. And Mozeliak has since said, like, yep, wish we would have done that a little differently. Let's let the bygones be bygones. And Wilson was a total pro about it. But in 2025, I don't think there's the leverage from anybody in the rotation that's going to cause an issue there. And they know that they need more runs. So if it's going to be a case where Herrera, who has raked the spring, needs to be in there, here, I'll just ask it to you since you copped out. Over under, I'll just do it this way. Over under 94.5 starts behind the plate for Ivan Herrera.
Over.
I would take under.
Okay.
However, not by much, and that could change easily. It could change if he's just raking. If he's got an 820 OPS, Pages, you're maybe once a week kind of guy, and Ivan gets the starts. But remember, most catchers who aren't Yadier Molina don't start 150 games, right? So it's rare for even a primary catcher to start a bunch of games. But what I think is going to happen, give him 90 starts, and he'll start at DH 40 times. You know what I mean? Like, because every time you face a lefty, why would he not be the DH and you get one more bat in the lineup unless Luke and Baker's your DH against lefties, which is where we can circle back to Yo Mama's question. Like, there's obviously a spot situationally where, Lucan could probably have some DH starts against lefties if you're not going to start. Like, what's a better lineup? Ivan Herrera behind the plate and Lucan DHing, or Pedro behind the plate and Ivan DHing against lefties? You can make a case that getting those bats in the lineup and letting Herrera sink or swim behind the plate could be the way that this season ends up going. Yeah, that's definitely possible.
Brendan, we are going to wrap up for today. Slew Billikens are on their way to beating Davidson right now. 4 seconds left.
Oh, baby.
They are up by 8. So Matt Rocchio and Bob Ramsey are going to come your way within the hour. in the 3:00 hour to bring you the Slew Hub post-game show conference championship edition of that. I would imagine you and Brooke will have a lot more thoughts on this tomorrow as you fill in again on the Randy Carricker Show, featuring Brooke Grimsley, produced by Matt Rocchio and being filled in by Brendan Schaefer.
It's getting wordy. The title is getting a little bit wordy, I gotta say.
Ryan Fagan and I will be your way tomorrow morning at around 9 a.m. for Cards Hub 365, an early morning edition of that tomorrow, before the spring breakout game and the Cardinals having a night game as well. A lot of baseball tomorrow, along with a lot of basketball. Now we'll have a Slew post-game show and tomorrow as well. And Brendan, I'm sure you're also hoping that we have a Mizzou post-game show tomorrow on Friday at some point.
I hope there is one tomorrow, and we'll see. I'm a coin flip on tonight, but let's get it done. Let's get that done so that the boys are talking about the season. I mean, the season's going to continue either way, but yes, I would love there to be a post game tomorrow for the Tigers.
We will be back with you tomorrow for more Cardinal talk here on Cards Hub 365. He's Brendan Schaefer. I'm Joe Roderick. This has been another presentation on Sports Hub STL.